Hi Lakewood Math 1 students, this is Ms. V, and this is the second video in your linear equations unit bundle. This is all about slope formula. In the last video, we figured out what slope was, and now I'm going to show you kind of a handy-dandy slope formula that you can use to calculate slope, even if you don't have your line graphed. So we call slope formula y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And it's a handy way of calculating the change in y and the change in x so that you can calculate your slope. So I'd like to start with example 1. And normally I don't graph these, I just use the formula. But I think if we graph this first problem, that what we'll see is why the formula works, and that's important to understand. So I have a point at 1, 1, and I have a point at 4, 3, which would be right about there. And I'm going to calculate my slope using this formula, and I always label my points, because if I don't, I get confused. I'm going to call this x1 and y1, and I'm going to call this x2, and I'm going to call this y2, so that I know which numbers to put into my formula. So we have y2, which is 3, minus y1, which is 1, and that gives us a change in y of 2. Now let's take a look at why that is. If we're going from y2, we're going from here to here. It's 2 units. So the 3 minus the 1 gives us those 2 units, or the change in y. The same thing is true if I take x2, which is 4, and subtract x1, which is 1, I get 3. And what you'll notice is 4, there's my x value, 4 minus 1 gives me these 3 units in my x value. Now it's very important to notice that for our slope here, we got a positive number, and we would expect that because our line is going up from left to right. So let's take a look at number 2 and see if we can do this without graphing. Again, I always label them because if I don't, I get mixed up. So I have x1 and y1. Oops, that should be y2. x1 and y1, and I have x2 and y2. And I'm going to say that y2 is negative 2, and then I'm going to subtract 4, and I put that over x2, which is 10, and I subtract negative 2. Notice when I subtract a negative 2, that ends up being the same as adding, so I end up getting 12 in my denominator. My numerator is negative 6, and this simplifies to negative 1/2. So there's my slope for number 2. One of the ways to check this is to go ahead and graph these points, and to make sure that you have a line that is going down from left to right. Let's try number 3. A lot of students ask me, does it matter which point is x1, y1, and which point is x2, y2? And the answer is no. So just to prove that, I'm going to make this x2, y2, and I'm going to make this x1, y1, and we'll get the same thing as if we did it the opposite way. So y2 is 5. There's y2. I'm going to subtract y1. And then I'm going to divide that by x2, which is negative 4. And I'm going to subtract x1, which is negative 8. So I think I've got that in right. Let's see. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I think my numerator ends up being 10. My denominator ends up being 4, because I'm adding this 8 here. And I can simplify that to 5/2. So my slope for problem number 3 is 5/2. Let's do number 4 together. We have x2, y2, and x1, y1. And this is going to be 0 minus 4 over 10 minus -2. So that gives me -4 over 8. And wait a minute, I think this is a 12, not an 8. When I subtract that negative, I'm actually adding. So I have -4 over 12, which simplifies to -1/3. And that's the slope of number 4. We'll do one more together, or maybe we should do 2 more together, and then I'll let you finish the rest of them on your own. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. And so I have Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. And this gives me 0 over -2. And notice, anytime my numerator is 0, the value of that is 0. So this should be a horizontal line. And if I graph those points, in fact, let's do that. If I have a point at 5, 9, and let's say 9 is right there, and I have a point at 3, 9, and I draw a line through those points, we'll notice that's a horizontal line. Last problem, x2, y2, x1, y1, and we have 8 minus 5 over -7 minus -7. So my numerator is 3, and -7 minus -7 is actually -7 plus 7, because I'm adding here. And it gives me a 0 in my denominator. And notice the 0 in my denominator means this has to be undefined. Can't do that. So pause the video, do problems 7 through 12, and then resume the video to check your answers. And here are the answers to the remaining problems in your notes. Once you've checked your answers and have asked good questions, then you should get your homework for the slope formula.